Turkey is a country we all know. We go on holiday there, we enjoy its big cities, it's a member of NATO. But in the last week, the closest rival to President Erdogan has been arrested and jailed for alleged corruption and terrorism charges. Protesters have taken to the streets across the country, fearing their democracy is dying. And with its vital role across Europe and the Middle East, how will Turkey's fate affect all of us? I'm Lucy Watson, and this is what you need to know. Well, I'm joined now by John Ray, one of our senior correspondents, and he is in Istanbul and has been there for several days and been out with protesters, talking to them. John, just how has it come to this? Just run us through a little bit what has angered so many in Turkey this past week or so.
Well, this goes back to last Wednesday, breakfast time. A huge number of police arrived at the house of a man called Imamoglu. He is the main opposition challenger, as you said, to President Erdogan. And they took him to a court and they said that there was good evidence to accuse him of bribery, of corruption, of fraud. Now, this guy is an extremely popular, very charismatic man. He's a sort of a secular mirror image of President Erdogan. And many people believe these charges are politically motivated, because if convicted of these charges, then he will be disqualified from running in the next presidential elections, which, Lucy, incidentally, aren't until another 3 years away. The Turkish government insists their judiciary is entirely independent, but I think it is fair to say that a lot of people in Istanbul, which is one of the main power bases of the opposition party, take that with a very large pinch of salt. They say this is about getting their guy out of the presidential race 3 years before it's supposed to happen.
Now, out on these protests, this guy, this opposition leader, Imamoglu, he is charismatic, like you say. He's loved by women. He's very much liked by the elderly, by the young. And it is mainly young people out protesting. Is that right? What are they saying to you?
It's a very mixed crowd here in Istanbul. You get middle-class people, you get working-class people. But yeah, there is a really high proportion of the people out protesting who are young people. And remember, for them, pretty much Erdogan is the only leader they have ever known in their life. He has run this country either as prime minister or as president for 22 years. And to be honest, they really, really want change. This is taking place against a backdrop of huge economic problems in Turkey. Inflation is running at around 40%. That is down from about double that last year. There is an acute cost of living crisis, something we'll be familiar with, of course, in the UK. But all this adds up to a really deep-seated feeling that 71-year-old Erdogan has had his time, and there needs to be a generational shift. Imamoglu is in his 50s. He seems to many people to represent Turkey's future.
Why do they want the shift, John, do you think? What are they saying?
Well, partly because it is of the fact that the economy is tanking, but also what has happened in the years of Erdogan's rule is that he started out as a man promising a fresh start. He was promising to get rid of the corruption, which has been endemic within Turkey for a long, long time. But he's become increasingly authoritarian. He now controls all the levers of the state, the police, the army. He controls a big chunk of the media. His critics say judicial independence is a thing of the past. So there is underlying this is a real concern of Turkey sliding away from democracy, which has never been perfect, and very much towards an autocracy, one man's rule. The demonstrations here in Istanbul have taken place outside the headquarters of the municipality. So that is a sort of a safe space, a stronghold for the opposition. But on the margins, what they've done is break down into disorder. And when the speechifying and the flag waving has ended, the police then have moved in most nights with tear gas, with pepper spray, with allegedly also plastic bullets. We've had more than 1,400 people arrested now, quite a number of people injured. They see this as sort of potentially part of the penalty of going out to protest. We spoke to some young people, and this is what they told us.
They dropped me to the floor. They punched me. I thought I was almost die. We saw so much violence. It's not normal, I think.
I am frightened. Of course I'm frightened. That's why I'm just covering up all my face just so that they cannot even, find my ID. But me being afraid doesn't mean that I'm not going to be here today and fight for my future.
How long can you keep this going?
As long as needed. As long as we get what we want.
Which is?
Freedom.
This is one of those odd situations, Lucy, when you can have the most intense protests going on. But if you step back a few streets, then life continues pretty much as normal. Istanbul is an extremely big city. I think 15 million people live here. If you have 20,000 in a protest, you can see that most people are not at the protest. The Foreign Office has updated its advice to British travellers to Turkey, and it's pretty sensible and not at all alarming. It says stay away from the protest, which seems to be a good idea. If it's not your fight, why get involved in it? If you started this by saying that so many British people are familiar with Turkey from coming on holiday here, there's nothing here that suggests you should stay away from the country as a whole, but just stay away from any protests.
And are any more planned that you're aware of, John?
So Tuesday night's big rally was designed to be the grand finale in terms of protests outside the opposition headquarters here in Istanbul. But they're saying that they will have more coming up over the weekend in different parts of the city. The idea is to spread the protests a little further afield. Now, that's interesting because this has been a safe place for them to protest. It's their own backyard. If they try to spread it throughout the city, perhaps the police will not be stepping back quite so much and allowing the rallies to take place. It'll also be interesting to see if they can keep the numbers up, because that's very important as to what happens next, whether Erdogan can ride this out or whether he really has miscalculated in jailing Imamoglu. What has he done? Has he overstepped the mark? Is this a watershed moment for Turkish democracy? Has he simply succeeded in galvanizing the opposition?
Now, John, the guy in your report that you spoke to in amongst the crowds, I mean, his exact words were, "We won't stop until we get what we want." And that is, and you asked him, "What is it you want?" And he said, "Freedom." We have, of course, seen uprisings of this nature before. I mean, the one that immediately springs to mind is Iran in 2022 after the death of Mahsa Amini and the Woman Life Freedom Movement. To me, for that, there was such fervour in that protest for months and months and months, incredible violence, and they really kept the numbers up. Do you think this has got that kind of momentum?
No, I don't think Turkey is Iran, and I think we're in a different part of the world. We're in a different political system. I think what is interesting about Erdogan is he seems to think that he has a moment now, an opportunity to deal with his likeliest challenger. And the reason that is the case is perhaps because there is also a new president in the White House who was lauding Erdogan. We know that Donald Trump cares a little less about democracy and is more of an admirer of strong men. Turkey is also the second biggest military force in NATO, so it's a really important player, not just with what's happening in Syria, just next door to us, but also what might happen next in terms of a Ukraine-Russia peace deal. Turkey has offered itself as a member of the coalition of the willing under Starmer. So it could be that Turkey has some kind of role to play if ever it comes to a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. And also, let's not forget, Turkey is home to many, many, many thousands of migrants who have made a home here, but might otherwise be heading in to Europe. So Turkey is really, really important for Europe's security. And I think that helps explain why the criticism of Erdogan has so far from Europe been pretty muted. Erdogan thinks he has this opportunity, the time and the space to deal with this problem.
John, do you think that the arrest of Imamoglu perhaps would have even happened had Trump not come to power, or is that too big a question, do you think?
I think that's impossible to say. But Erdogan's problems, if he wants to stay in power, don't begin and end with Imamoglu. There's a fundamental issue for him, is that he is out of time anyway. Mm-hmm. The constitution here says that he cannot run for a third term as president. So he's either going to rewrite the constitution, which of course is another big step, his critics will say, away from democracy, or, and perhaps more likely, he can call an early election. Now, as I said, the actual presidential elections aren't scheduled for 3 years, but if he calls them in 2 years' time, then he gets round the term limit idea. He just doesn't want this main rival on the stage when he makes his next move. However, the problem he has now got is he has made a martyr of Imamoglu. This man has become somebody that the whole country can now rally around. Put that together with the fact that the economy is in an extremely difficult position, and you can say that the future for the strongman Erdogan does not necessarily look strong at all. He actually might still be in a pretty weak position.
Just very quickly, John, as our man on the ground out there, I'll throw you a final question for you to tell me. Is this the beginning of the end of Erdogan or the beginning of the end of democracy in Turkey, do you think?
I'm going to give you the classic journalist answer and say it really is too early to tell. The stakes are high for both sides. Miscalculation on either side, and they could lose this. Erdogan only needs for his police force to go too far in cracking down on the protests, and God forbid, maybe lives are lost, and that will turn a very tense situation into an inflammatory one. Or the opposition could overplay its hand. The protests could become violent, in which case the great mass of Turkish people who do not live in Istanbul may see in Erdogan the strongman to protect their interests, to maintain law and order. That's certainly how the government is trying to play this.
John, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for all your reporting and your insights. And if you want the latest on this story, head to itv.com/news. Until our next quick briefing, thank you very much for joining us.